Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Constance the Reader. And today we're going to be talking about Nonfiction November. So Nonfiction November was an initiative created by A Book Olive where it's just to encourage people to read more nonfiction and maybe get a little fun with it. I did this, I think the last 2 years. I definitely tried to do it last year. I read a lot of nonfiction. I'm not only going to exclusively read nonfiction, but you can. I'm going to be talking about the prompts that A Book Olive has talked about. I'm going to be talking about what I plan to read and giving you guys some suggestions as well. And without further ado, let's get into what I will be doing for Nonfiction November. So just to start off, these are optional prompts that you can do to help you pick some nonfiction books. So there's 4 words that you can use to try to help you figure out a topic. So there's fraud, web, capital, and display. And the way it works is, okay, web, you might think, oh, I'm gonna read a nonfiction book about the internet, but it could also be a book about spiders. Fraud could be about someone that's fraudulent, maybe like a true crime situation. So you don't have to be so specific with it. A Book Olive also talks about how display could be, I read a nonfiction book that was on display at a bookstore. So you can kind of do whatever you want with these prompts. I'm personally just gonna go through the long list of books that I have on my TBR and talk about the ones that I'm currently in the middle of reading. So do what you will. It is really fun. I would suggest just do what your heart tells you, okay? And you also don't have to read a lot of nonfiction if you don't want to. You can start out with something that is small and easy to get through. I know that for me, I like to read nonfiction, but if it's really long, I like to listen to it as an audiobook. So that's a good suggestion if you feel like it's hard for you to sit down with a physical book and get through it all the way. So do what feels right for you. But we're going to start off with the books that I'm currently in the middle of reading now. This one, I've been in the middle of reading it for 3 months now, and that's on me. So I'm determined in the month of November to actually finish Unapologetic, A Black, Queer, and Feminist Mandate for Radical Movements by Charlene A. Carruthers. So I've been dipping into this on and off. I feel like I've been more so reading a lot of manga, which, I mean, that's just a fact, I have been. But I really do want to finish this. I've had it for a while and it's just time. This is the perfect time to finish it. I'm in the middle of reading Except for Palestine, The Limits of Progressive Politics by Mark Lamont Hill and Mitchell Plitnick. I have already made it to chapter 2 in this. It's really short. This is not this is not a book that's super long. I'm gonna be honest with you. It might look like it's really long, but what I'm getting through right now, these are the notes. Those are acknowledgements, conclusion. So this is only 158 pages long if you don't care to read the notes, which, I mean, that's up to you if you're into that. So far, I've really enjoyed this, and I didn't know that this was actually originally written during the Trump presidency. So it's interesting to learn about the history of our agreement with Israel, what changed during the Trump presidency, and it's interesting now living through the Biden presidency coming up to the next election. And I would encourage you to listen to some of the interviews that Mark Lamont Hill has been giving if you want to learn a little bit more about what is going on in Palestine, to the Palestinian people, how Black liberation in America, it's intersected with what's going on in Palestine. Just do your due diligence and learn, especially during times like these. There are also other readathons going on, and I'm not going to talk a lot about that readathon per se, but I'll put information down in the description box below for y'all if you're interested. So one book that I am going to be reading, I have it ordered, is going to be The Roma, The History of the Romani People and the Controversial Persecution of Them Across Europe. That is less than 100 pages, so that will definitely be something that I can sit down, read in one go. I'm hoping, take your time, you definitely want to take your time and absorb everything, but I don't think I should have a hard time finishing that in a month. I also would like to read In Defense of Looting, The Riotous History of an Uncivil Action. That's by Vicky Osterweil. I think that's how you pronounce their last name. I'll read a little bit of it for y'all. This is on the Amazon website. Looting, a crowd of people publicly, openly, and directly seizing goods, is one of the more extreme actions that can take place in the midst of social unrest. Even self-identified radicals distance themselves from looters, fearing the violent tactics reflect badly on the broader movement. But Vicky argues that stealing goods and destroying property are direct, pragmatic strategies of wealth redistribution and improving life for the working class, not to mention the brazen messages these methods send to the police and the state. All our beliefs about the innate righteousness of property and ownership, she explains, are built on the history of anti-Black, anti-Indigenous oppression. From slave revolts to labor strikes to the modern-day movements for climate change, Black lives, and police abolition, Vicky makes a convincing case for rioting and looting as weapons that bludgeon the status quo while uplifting the poor and marginalized. In Defense of Looting is a history of violent protests sparking social change, a compelling reframing of revolutionary activism, and a practical vision of a dramatically restructured society. So I'm wondering if we're also going to be talking about like Hurricane Katrina and how there was all this looting going on when it was being reported that Black people were doing it, but it was survival when it was white people during Hurricane Katrina that were doing it. I'm definitely going to be interested in reading that, especially because of what we see happening in Palestine right now. We're already starting to see the reframing of people who have had to go into, I think it's a UN building, to get food because there's a blockade. Like, trucks are not getting into Palestine to give aid to these people. They don't have, bakeries are being destroyed. Come on now. So it's going to be interesting because we're already seeing this again. We're seeing this now. So it'll be interesting to read this book knowing that it's a cycle that's going to repeat itself the more we have natural disasters, war, occupation, etc. So far, that's not too many books, all right? On the docket is 4 options for me. But if you've been with my channel for a while, you know it wouldn't be me if I didn't make it ambitious. But I'm going to try to keep it reasonable because some of these on Hoopla that I want to talk about are audiobooks of books that I own behind me. I just know that they're over 100 pages and I might not be able to be in the mood to read that much nonfiction physically, but I could absolutely listen to an audiobook. So I would really like to listen to Invisible Women, Data Bias in a World Designed for Men by Caroline Perez. That is basically 9.5 hours long. I listen to these on 2 times the speed, so it should cut it down a bit. Okay, just by a bit. And to round it out, I think I will also be listening to Women Without Kids by Ruby Warrington, The Revolutionary Rise of an Unsung Sisterhood. So now let's talk about some nonfiction I recommend people read that I have read and I like and I think are worth reading. So we're going to start off with something funny. Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. I really enjoyed this book. I listened to this as an audiobook and I think that both forms are really good. You know, you can see I started to read it physically, but then I saw it was free on Hoopla and I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and listen to it. This was very, very good. I also liked their other book, which is called Word Slut. I think that if you are someone who is interested or, I don't know, maybe fascinated by cults, you might like Cultish. I think that it is somewhat surface level. It's not going to be too like deep into cults. Like there's not like a super duper deep psychology like info dump on anything of like how people get involved in cults. I just think that it was a really interesting book. She does do a few interviews in there too for different cults that people have been in and some that you wouldn't expect to have been considered a cult. So I really like that book. I think that you would like it. Alrighty, so a memoir. I would definitely go for This Is Just My Face by Gabourey Sidibe. I haven't read this in so long, but I read this when it first came out and this was a really great memoir. I would highly recommend it. I actually wonder what this would be. I wonder if she voiced this as an audiobook. If she did, I would say listen to the audiobook. I didn't listen to it, I read it, but this was really good and it was really surprising the stuff that she revealed, especially the interaction that she had with Lee Daniels, that I was like, I could see why Monique feels the way that she does. That's all I'm saying. I don't have the books with me, but I would absolutely recommend read Gabrielle Union's memoirs. Both of them are so good in my opinion. I absolutely love the first one. Those are fantastic. I will always recommend those no matter what. I know that I mentioned Mark Lamont Hill, but I would say read things by him. So I read this earlier this year, We Still Here, Pandemic, Policing, Protest, and Possibility. This was easy read. Very, very easy for you to get through. I thought that it was a good read, but also like kind of, I don't want to say triggering, but for lack of a better word, because we're talking about the pandemic, kind of brought me back to those feelings of, I don't want to say hopelessness, but it just brought me back to where I was mentally during the pandemic. And it was hard. It was hard for a lot of people. So this was a really good book. And his first book, Nobody, was also really good. Reclaiming Our Space, How Black Feminists Are Changing the World, From the Tweets to the Streets, Feminista Jones. This was a great book. How to Be Less Stupid About Race by Crystal M. Fleming. This was a great book. I've mentioned these two before. Can We All Be Feminists? This is new writing from Britt Bennett, Nicole Dennis Benn, and 15 others on intersectionality, identity, and the way forward for feminism. This was a really good book, especially if you feel like you want to learn a little bit more about intersectional feminism or want to understand people who have a valid issue and critique against like white feminism, or just like the kind of like cookie cutter feminism I think a lot of us are introduced to really early on. This had a lot of really thought-provoking and valid questions in my opinion. Always will recommend Eloquent Rage, a Black Feminist Discovers Her Superpower by Brittany Cooper. This was I guess this would be considered a memoir. This would be fantastic as well. If you want to read a little bit more about reproductive rights, but you are looking for something that's kind of like introductory, I would say Pro by Katha Pollitt, Reclaiming Abortion Rights, is a good like intro to abortion rights. I read this, ooh Lord, when you know who won the presidency and Mike Pence was the damn vice president, I was like, Lord have mercy. That was one of the books that I read with my mom and my sister for our book club. It was hard times, y'all. It was hard times. Everybody remembers it. I remember. And if you watched my last video, the book tag, the Fellowship of the Ring book tag, I'm just going to go over these really quick for those who might not have seen it or know again. So Without Apology, The Abortion Struggle Law by Jenny Brown. One I constantly recommend. I think it is really good. I'm always going to recommend Handbook for Post-Roe America, The Complete Guide to Abortion Legality, Access to Practical Support by Robin Marty. This is really good. Lifting While We Climb, Black Women's Battle for the Ballot Box by Yvette Dion. The 7 Necessary Sins for Women and Girls by Mona Etahawi. Really, really good. Like I mentioned before, Mark Lamont Hill's Nobody. That was the first book I read by Mark Lamont Hill. I read this so long ago. It was Florence Flo Kennedy, The Life of a Black Feminist Radical. I guess that this would be considered an autobiography. Very, very good. And shit, I'll try to link my last year's video for Nonfiction November just for some more suggestions. If you have some suggestions for nonfiction books that you think are interesting, please let me know down in the comments below. I hope that you participate in Nonfiction November. Just remember, you don't have to read as much as I'm reading or anybody else. Like, you can read or listen to one book. There's plenty of books that I've talked about on my channel that range from being super funny. If you want something that's more lighthearted, memoirs, definitely I can give you suggestions there. If you want something that's a little bit deeper of a topic, I talk about those too, which is what I've kind of mentioned here. But yeah, just give it a try. Read at least one nonfiction book. Suggest at least one nonfiction book to someone. It's worth it to be knowledgeable about particular topics. That's all I'm saying. And yeah, thank you so much for watching my video. If you like the video, please like the video. If you like it, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Follow me on other social media. It's down in the description box below. I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you those who might not care for the manga, part of my channel. Kind of stick with me. And thank you to those people who are probably only here for the manga stuff, who kind of sift through the other stuff we talk about on booktube. I appreciate all of y'all so much. And my mom and my sister. I'm shouting y'all again. I love you guys and my family. Hello. And thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. Goodbye.